was that's happened. So he might be able to come on through here. I sure hope so. I typically, well, I'm going to turn this to kind of see
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, so I typically, if you guys are like going to be out like that or anything like that, what I'll do is I'll pipe you in through here, and so it'll be available. What'll happen is it'll also record this, and so when we're done, if he's not able to make it, I can download that, upload it into YouTube. I could upload it directly into Blackboard. It's always funky though, so I'd usually drop it over in YouTube, put a link out there, and so if anybody missed today, they can just, oh, there's a link here, click, and it actually, I'll set it up where I can track it to where I can see who's clicked the link and who hasn't, how long do they watch, that kind of stuff, because that's all stuff you can do in Blackboard. It's pretty easy to do that kind of stuff. And
Well, thank you very much, sir. I'm
COVID reminder email.
Yes, so that's coming up. I would expect it to get a little rough here in the next couple months because people are going to start falling ill. And probably the most interesting thing I would ask you to look at in terms of numbers, if you're CJ major, think about this in terms of methods whenever we get to research methods, because it will affect it directly. Okay. How many people who had COVID, right, went and got a test and tested positive, right? How many other things can test positive as COVID that aren't? How many people died from COVID? And then over the last 3 years, how many people have died from the flu? And then look back 5 years before that and ask me, it's like, what changed with the flu? Because what you'll see is as COVID numbers rise, flu numbers start dropping. And what it is you have people who have multiple things. They just label it as COVID. You count as a COVID death. You might actually be a flu death, or you might just get the flu, but you might also have COVID. Or it's like you get in a motorcycle accident or a car accident. Let's say you die and they as you're dying, they test you for COVID. And yeah, you test positive for your COVID death. It's like, no, you're not. But you are counted there. And so it's like, when it comes to researching this stuff, you put a whole bunch of junk in the beginning of it, it's going to be like that the whole time. And there's no fixing that. But we'll come back to that in a little bit. So things I have done in the last couple of days. All right. How many of you have been in Blackboard since yesterday? Just a couple of them. Okay, that's good. That's good.
The quiz you said.
So we got a couple quizzes out there. They're not, yes, technically they're due. What I tend to do is I tend to let you guys know when it's like, I'm going to start shutting these down at this point in time. It's like we're out of this topic. Since we only have 2 tests in here, the midterm and the final, I'll probably just keep everything open until the midterm and then shut off that probably a week after the midterm and say, okay, that was your opportunity to go back and get anything you missed. Because you had half a semester, get that stuff done. It's different than what you'll get in most other classes where it's like, here's the deadline. It's like, yeah, because that's great for school. That's great for maybe early career. That's not what you're going to do whenever you get to the workforce. It's going to be like, I need to have this by next month. And really, I'm looking for it in like 2 weeks. And that means you need to have it done a week from now because something's going to come up. Right. And that's why I do those deadlines like that. It's like, this is when the preferred deadline is. I want it in by that day. I'm going to give you more time. But if it's that, if you're getting to that point, it's like, realize that you're spending your own time. And that's the big thing is 90% of your life is going to be time management. It will be, no matter what career you go into or anything. Ask me how that's going for me right now. It's like, no. I went to bed at 2. I got up at 7 and I overslept. And it's like, that's busy. That's too busy. I wouldn't expect you guys to be like that in 10 years, something like that, 15 years. But you will run into it where you need to run a schedule, and that schedule is going to look something like horrible. It's going to look horrible. I'll show you what mine looks like. You know what? Forget it. I'm not going to.
Yeah,
no,
you don't have time.
No, forget all that. All right. So here's what I've done in Blackboard. All right. So syllabus stuff I haven't changed. The deadlines I think I'm going to leave it like it is because the deadlines are the preferred deadlines. But I have opened up more stuff. So chapter 1, chapter 2, we're here. We're going to move into here today. Quiz 1, that's been due for a while. Go ahead and hop into it. It's just going to be off these 2. Quiz 2 off of 3 and 4. That one's set to be due today. Of course, you'll have more time because we're going to be moving into chapter 4 probably next week. And so you'll want to work ahead on that because you'll come in better prepared for the conversation. Vengeful Johnny Depp. Vengeful Depp. I like that. I put up assignment 1. Assignment 1's tied in with chapter 5. It has a preferred deadline of next week. You don't need to start the because we're not in policing yet. Hello. I see you. I'll share my screen.
What's up?
So hopefully you are feeling passable. It's like, it's okay. So here's what I've done in Blackboard. I've gone ahead and I've put, I think all the chapter stuff's out there. So if you click into any of these, it'll have the outline in PowerPoint, right? That should be enough to really get you ready for at least a first attempt on the quiz between that and reading the book. And if you feel like you need more, like it's not enough, let me know and we can talk about that. That's if you want to work ahead. If you don't, when we get to it, that's when I'll be like, okay, get this in. Assignment 1, when we start to move into policing, I will want you to start this one early a little bit, because what you're going to find is something really, really interesting. Okay. Review the attached items. These are actually, I think it's 2 committees and that NAP report. Nope. I think both of these were committees. NAP and Lexound. I think Mullen was a commission, and I have them all listed as commissions. Nope. Committee, commission. Anyhow. This will cover over 100 years, getting closer to what was 1890, so 130 years, almost 150 years worth of reports related to policing in big cities, right? And you're going to see some commonalities there. So these are long reports. You won't want to read them entirely like books, but you will want to kind of sit down and kind of skim through it pretty fast, because like this one is, I can't see for this thing. That one's only 3 pages. So that's the shortest one I could find there. Lexhouse from Encyclopedia, and it's only, what is this? This is a short one, but that third one might be a long one. Let's see, how long is that? Yeah, that one's 15 pages. That one's a little longer. And this is the actual report from the 90s, right? And so as you read those things, you're going to have fun, because you're going to see, it's like, we're talking about New York City. What's the history of New York City and policing? Like, you're going to see a little bit of that. Okay. Now, next up, we got the rest of those chapters in if you want to look at it. And what I'll do is I'll pop these assignments and quizzes in kind of towards their respective locations, as if, I guess, none of this stuff was available beforehand. So you'll see where we're at. We'll just move through it. Don't worry too much about it. If you ever have any questions about deadlines, I'll put them up probably on the board. And I'll probably get into practice of doing that as things start coming to. It's like, okay, this Monday is when I'm closing that kind of thing. All right, so that squares that away. We can close out of those and that. And we are moving back into chapter 2. Downloads chapter 2. We left off, we talked about the elements of law. We had talked a little bit about the UCR and the NIBRS. That's right. So now, next thing I need to do is clarify NIBRS, the NCVS, and a few of the other things that exist. That is what you find a marker. Someone took my marker out of me. Purple, maybe that works. All right. So, and this will actually come up again a little bit in research methods. So you guys, if you're a CJ major in a couple of years, you'll take research methods, and you'll have another lesson about this, and we'll tell you a little bit about what it means. So we've got UCR, we've got NIBRS, we have, there's some other ones. Say supplementals. Okay. UCR and NIBRS. So UCR, I've told you a little bit about. Both of those are managed by the FBI. So basically what happens is, since we have a decentralized policing system, there's no hierarchy there. So there's no clear reporting chain, right? Let's say if you had a report due at work, even with the jobs you had, it's like, you know exactly who you'd have to turn that into. You know probably who that person's going to have to turn that into if it's got to go up the chain, right? It's not like that with policing. Once you get outside the police department itself, it's like, okay, who's in charge? So like asking you the question, who's the most powerful police officer in any given area? Do you guys know? Have we talked about that? More than the police can probably wouldn't talk about that just yet. Your sheriff has the most power in any given area. literally the county kind of thing. But we'll talk more about that when we get into policing. Like there is no clear hierarchy. If someone's gonna pull jurisdiction, that person has the strongest and it's most clearly defined, right? So we want to get this stuff to the FBI. What they do is they have the police departments, the police departments can either report it directly to them, or depending on the state and the state structure, the reporting structure they put in place, that may be something to where all the local level police departments, municipal police departments, maybe even county departments, send it to the state, and the state puts it together and sends it off to the feds, right? So anytime there's people involved, there's errors. So there are errors all throughout this, both of these. Actually, any of these sources will have errors. This is a method, so I'm not going to talk about that. What I want to talk about is this. This one will give you one crime per incident, right? So if I, let's say, you're dealing with Walmart, it's about 1 a.m. and say it's a 24-hour Walmart. You get there, you get called in, you're a police officer, and the guy who's being kind of cornered by security or employees or whatever. And the time that he's been in there, he's grabbed 2 or 3 different females in inappropriate ways. He's tried to steal 2 or 3 different things and he punched a guy, right? It's like, yeah, like 5, 6 crimes there. We only can report 1. So this one, what they do is they take the most serious crime. That's what that incident was, right? And so you're stuck kind of with a little bit of the structure of how do we define what the most serious crime is here, right? And so you get a very limited picture of what's actually taking place. This will have your smallest number. Why? Because its picture of what's going on in the world is going to be reduced to just the one most serious thing that's taking place, any incident. I mean, a lot of incidents have many things going on, right? NIBRS steps it up a little bit. So what it does is instead of having, that one field where it's like, what is your crime? It'll have multiple, right? And so you can capture most of the crimes that have actually taken place, if not all of the crimes that took place in a given incident. So a lot more detail. It'll give you information about the victim, the offender, that kind of thing. This just will tell you like location, crime type, numbers, that kind of thing. More detail. The difference between these two things is time. So most police departments have elected to submit UCR numbers, not all, most. I mean, I don't know the numbers the book will give you. It'll be somewhere between like 80, 90, maybe more than 90% do it because it's pretty easy to do. It's just, okay, here's a list of the numbers for our most serious crimes and only for certain crimes. This one requires you to send in the number of hours it takes to fill this thing out compared to that is massive. You guys have ever seen a police report, those take a little bit of time to complete. You then got to figure out, okay, I've got 6 fields. How am I going to fill out these fields with this report kind of thing? And there's somebody who does that, right? Much more time invested, not nearly as widespread. So the last time I checked is something like 50 to 80. I think it's like 50 to 60% had moved over to NIBRS. It's been increasing. So more and more police departments are using this. In fact, Oklahoma just switched over to the system effective last year or was the year before, right? So you gather numbers for crimes for this, for anything prior to like last year, you're getting UCR numbers. Afterwards, you're getting NIBRS numbers. The difference between the two can be stark. To kind of give you an example of that. How many marijuana arrests take place in Oklahoma in a year? Have you guys talked to you about this?
Yeah.
No? Yeah, okay.
Yes, you
Okay.
said that's.
Yeah, no, that's good. If I mention this, I don't need to go into more detail. Excellent. If you catch me doing that, point it out fast. Yeah, it went from like 3,000 arrests to 300. And in a given year, and this is like 5 years after medical marijuana's passed, it's like a reduction in 90% is false. What's happened is somewhere in that reporting scheme, there are some things that are falling under the hierarchy rule here. Or not the hierarchy rule there, that are getting reclassified over here. It would normally be pulled down here. I want to say drug crimes are separate from that, but I'd have to look. So something's happened with their reporting there. So those numbers are not accurate. Now. And that's between state for a given year, fed for a given year, and then they only had fed for UCR numbers over here. If I go into NIVERS, I'm gonna get a wildly different, number. It's gonna capture a whole lot more, so it's like, it's just a mess. Now, these will both capture official. Remember when we were talking about that dark figure of crime, right? How do we get an idea? So these are gonna be our smallest estimates for how much crime there is. And over here, they start getting larger. We want to capture the true number, so we know that this number, either of these numbers aren't it, so it's gonna be more than those. So how do we try to put a bookend on this and say, okay, so if we have an estimate for the lowest number is that for crimes that actually happened, you're looking over here, right? On the other end, you have things like this. I'm gonna put up NCVS, National Crime Victimization Survey. The only survey there is like this, but this is the biggest one. What it does is it goes through and it tries to get an accurate picture using research methods. Tries to get an accurate picture of what's going on in the country. And what it does is it calls households and asks, okay, how many people are there in the household? How many of you have been a victim to a crime and what crimes? And tell us about it, right? And so now the number you get for people who say that they've been victimized in the last year is a much, much higher number. Much higher number, right? Now you're gonna have some problems with both of these things. If this is our methods class, I'd go into those problems to kind of give you a quick kind of identification. How many of you were a victim to a low-level crime you didn't report? Like, that's just about everybody, right? So-and-so stole my toy, right? Kid at school, never brought it back. That's a low-level crime. It's a kid, but it's still a low-level crime. My bike's missing, low-level crime, right? It's like, who's gonna report that? It's a really expensive bike, yeah, but if it's like a $20 bike, who gives a shit? It's gonna go for another $20 or a bike, and go right around until it gets breaks down and gets stolen somewhere else, right? And so why divide in these numbers? Entire arguments about what course to take this country in have been made just based on failing to understand this. What do I mean by that? Pick your crime type. It's always gonna be smaller over here, always gonna be larger over here. You got reasons why people mess things up. They might fail to report. They may remember things inaccurately, right? Like, let's say, if I say assaulted, like I had that conversation earlier about the difference between assault and battery. I ask you about assaults and you confuse the time you were battered with it, right? My numbers are off. So it is an estimate. There's some big questions here. But the difference between these two can be stark. And when I say stark, it's probably the most obvious place where there's been arguments about this that we made in a public venue is related to sex crimes. Right? You've all heard some argument about sex crimes, right? I mean, you guys have the Title IX stuff you have to do every year, right? You guys have Title IX stuff you have to do every year? Yeah, I guess yeah, at least once. Hell, as employees make us do it every semester. My last university, whenever I was a student, it was every single year, so I had to do it twice a year. And it's like, that's
makes you do it every 3 months.
every 3 months. That sounds about right, because 4 times a year is just effective and efficient. It's like, yeah, no, the people you're gonna have problems with, they're always gonna be people you have problems with. The ones you don't, won't be typically. But say this one right here, rape. Now that's one that carries with it some very, very serious stuff, right? You have everything associated with crime, you have everything associated that happens thereafter, right? Which I won't, because this is kind of an important one to understand. I'll have to send them an email, and be nasty. No, I won't be nasty. I'll just be like, this is what you missed out on. This was an important lesson because this, okay. How many of these occur in this country in a given year is an unknown, right? You have those that are reported, you have those who say that that's happened to them. Hell, you also have, I don't think the book talks about this, but you have the same kind of thing, but for offenders, right? How many crimes do you commit?
None.
Yeah, unless you think it's cool, right? Yeah, I go out and, I went out and I drank over the weekend and drove and I smoked, whatever drugs. It's like, if you're in a certain age group or certain subcultures, like that might be cool. So you might but here we're talking about rape. Okay? What are the odds that it's gonna happen to any one of us, male or female? It's increased for females, of course. But what are the odds that it's gonna happen? High, low, moderate?
If we're talking about entire life from adult to, well, child, well, it's about a fourth, like 25% for males and 33% for females.
Okay, life. We'll say 1 out of 4 or 1 out of, you say
3.
1 out of 3, okay. You said 33%. Okay. Male, female. Okay. We'll run with that. Time is a huge part of this. In a given year, it's lower, but we'll say lifetime, right? Numbers you get here versus the numbers here are so wildly different that you're looking at. If you use these numbers, you are right about here. I want to say it's something like, they say, is it 1 in 4 women will have it happen to them over the course of their life, statistically speaking. We'll come back to that in a second, right? Over here, the odds of it happening are like 0.01 or 0.1% or 1%. So 1/10 of 1%, something like that, or maybe 100th of 1%. It's like, okay, so you're telling me 1 out of, we'll say 100 to 1 out of 4.
That would be 1 out of 10,000.
Yeah, or you can say 1 out of 10,000, you can say 1 out of 100, you can say 1 out of 10,000. It's like, that is a big gap. Right? 1 is it's rare. You'd say is essentially a statistical anomaly in maybe communities of this size. Is it? Probably not. I would highly doubt that. I'm sure that it happens within, if you put a 20-mile radius around this campus, it's like, how many of those happened in the last year? It's gonna be more than this, right?
Is it because it's not the most serious?
No,
Right.
no. Yeah, they don't report it. Why? There are a lot of reasons not to, right? Let's say, happens to a man. What happens to a man? Well, one, it's gonna depend on who the assault, like the perpetrator was, right? Male or female. If it's female, what, you didn't want it?
Yeah, or
Right.
or several instances of them believing the female and the male going to jail.
Yep, and that
going
might
to
happen
prison.
too. That's the difference when we start talking about like false charges and that kind of thing. That stuff happens too. So that's the other side of the problem. Like here, just trying to get people to report is a huge problem, which is why you have things like, what was it, the Me Too movement, stuff like that. It's because you've got this really taking place, but only this is kind of getting dealt with, but not really. Like, yeah, that's gonna cause some problems in society. Then you have, on the other side is if you go too far, you have false accusations on the other side. So we don't want to make it so easy to do so that you can do that, but in terms of, what's the rate for false accusations?
Well, if you ask NSU, who has a very vested interest in not getting sued,
That's
that
true.
stuff never happens in the history of ever.
That's true. That's true. So if you look at any institution, the pressure on them is going to keep that number low. And so you have pressures for non-reporting there too. And that's aside from just the social stuff, like as in, you're a female, it happened to you, or let's say it's a guy and it happened to you and you were drinking or whatever. And it's like, oh, so you were asking for it. Like, no, I was not. I was out for a good time. And it's like, well, if I'm getting that kind of response before I'm even halfway in the door, what's likely that I'm going to spend the next 6 hours here, the next 6 weeks, the next however many years it's going to take to get me over here, that kind of thing. Because it's gonna take a little bit of time. It's gonna be uncomfortable. It's gonna be a horrible experience. And most people won't even do that for something like their bite, right? And that's not something that's associated with trauma, right? And that's what this is. So there's plenty of reasons why not. Entire arguments have been made on this. Like if I said, the rape culture myth on YouTube, things like that. It's like, you'll find entire arguments that are made. Well, the real problem's only this. And if we really have a problem like this, What we just need to do is make sure people are strong enough they go and report. It's like, yeah, good luck with that, buddy. That shit ain't gonna fly. It's like, you wanna do nothing? That's your risk. Trying to get this more accurate, that's gonna be something that's gonna take us probably the next 100 years. Right? And that's if we do it right and don't completely screw up and society doesn't falter before then.
And that's just adults who know what rape is.
Yeah.
And do not, and are not, what's the term, not hiding these memories, but suppressing.
Yeah.
Suppressing those memories to the point where the
Mhm.
evidence was quite literally washed away decades ago.
Yeah, and that happens a lot because, well, I mean, think about this. It's like you're a kid person's an adult who's gonna believe you. By the time you're an adult and go forward, it's 20 years as you're after, in some states, the statute of limitations. So it's like, that will never occur over here. It's like, you will never see those numbers pop up over here. You'll see them pop up here. Right? So where is the real number for how many occurred? We got no clue. We think it's somewhere between 1 in 10,000 and 1 in 4. Those are our bookends. It's like, hell, this number could be overreported because it could be false accusations. This number could be underreported because maybe they're still suppressing. It's like, it's a big question. So we need to do the best that we can in this field because we want to know if we're doing things that work. This is one of those problems we have to resolve very early on to see if we're working things right. Knowing that our information comes from stuff like this, you see that we're tied into these fields and it works to matter when they feed into information. There's always more that we need to get. There's inaccuracies throughout the whole thing. We have to figure that out and move forward.
The military gives you two different kind of options to report it.
Mm-hmm.
Do a closed report or an open report.
Yeah.
The closed report, well,
No charges.
yeah, then it's like super. That's why it's called closed. It's not publicly available.
Yeah. You're not looking for some type of investigation or
Yeah.
something like that. You just want notice out there.
Right.
At least that's something,
But
right?
when
That's,
you put a closed report in, you can make it open at any time.
ooh, I like that.
Mhm.
I like that. So you can also go back and look at the record of it. It's like,
Yeah.
this report was generated like a day after the incident was alleged to have occurred. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, you got some proof there. Yes.
Alright, so,
Mhm.
alright, so. Alright, so like, alright, so. Alright, to make a long story short, I had to file one of those reports when I was, being held, being held by the, 737th, because that's essentially where.
Military, yes.
The transitionary flight, because that's where they keep, where the Air Force keeps people they want to imprison, but don't have an actual reason to.
Yes, you're kind of
Pretty-
stuck in that kind of limbo area.
Yeah, and so and whenever, or unfortunately, other people, mostly females, males, which I won't go into detail on that. You
Okay.
can imagine what goes on in those showers. The unfortunate truth is that because they're already holding them, they're not going to actually go out and imprison them.
Yeah, they
and
might.
so they don't want to get sued. So the people who do that actually get rewarded by getting to go home, and the victims
that's
have to
another way.
stay longer.
Yeah, that's another.
Yeah,
way
that
to
was,
deal with it.
that almost got me killed a dozen times, sorry,
I
2
believe it.
dozen times.
I believe it, because you're ended up, and that's not entirely uncommon. It's sort of like, when we get into the policing thing, ask me what happens with bad officers. What typically happens is they go find a job somewhere else, right? It's like, they don't leave that career. Whether it's they go and they change to maybe a smaller town or something like that where they've not been heard of, or maybe they go and they change careers a little bit and it's like, okay, now I'm in security for the next couple of years while I build up my history and go right back into it, right? And get those opportunities I was looking to take advantage of again. And that stuff's very, very common. But next up, we need to talk about fear. So when they start talking about costs of crime, there are a whole lot of ways to figure it. We talked a little bit about it. I kind of medical expenses, all those things that come out about it. We didn't talk so much about fear, because fear is one of the intangibles that's associated with crime. Basically what it does is, it's been a leading area of research in criminal justice since about the 1960s, where it really took it started to come up in prominence. And so if you think about, that whole victimization experience, what does it generate? Well, depending on what it is and how serious it was, it can very very much upend your life, and fear is a big part of that. So let's say, we'll say home invasion. You guys get many of those around here? I've never looked at that, I've not heard of any.
I
All
think
right.
there are attempts.
They don't usually go well, do they?
California had a couple
Mm-hmm.
situations though.
Yeah, so let me tell you a little bit about that. So I'll tell you a story and then we'll come back to it. And I know what's in my mind because I had a video pop up from, I think it was 11 years ago, where there was a lady who had, her husband had just died. She's in her early 20s. He died from,
Car accidents?
I don't remember what it was. Whether it was a health thing or whether it was an accident or something like that, or if it was military. I don't remember. But she was at home, newborn by herself.
Oh, wow,
Right.
this is not going to end well.
No, it doesn't. Well, yeah, it kind of does actually,
Oh,
right?
yes.
A little surprising. This is why I was thinking military. I'd have to look back at it. I've got to watch history, so I'll have to look back at it. She's on the phone with, the reason why it was a viral video 11 years ago, so 911 call where she asks, "Can I shoot this guy?" Yeah, you know which one I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so what happens is she's on the other side of the door. There are two guys here. They're trying to come in. And there you go. That's it. Story's over. She shot one of them, killed him, shot the other one, I think, too. I think the other one lived. And I was like, yeah, good resolution. You were properly equipped for a situation you didn't ask for. Like that stuff's gonna happen out there in the real world.
But then you have to deal with everything.
Mhm.
else too.
How is she gonna feel the next time someone she doesn't know answers or knocks on the door? Right?
She's gonna go, she's
Yeah,
got an
that
option.
gun's gonna be nearby.
Yeah,
Yeah, right? And so it's like, this is a very, very real thing. So in terms of what you need to know about it, let's see what this thing says, and I'll tell you a little bit more. All right. Fear of crime, what people fear, who fears crime, that kind of stuff. Here's,
Also the fear of like the system too.
Yeah.
It's not that you
Mhm.
don't just shoot a home invader and then you're just good.
oh, yeah.
You still have to go through the system.
And even in places where you have legal protections to do so, it's like, fuck, you might just have an overzealous prosecutor.
Mhm.
You might
Or depend, I watched a video about a study that they did in like the 90s about what kind of gun you use
Mhm.
and what gender the home defender was, how it can have an effect on
oh, yeah.
how your system would go.
Oh, yeah. If you got a scary gun,
Mhm.
expect charges. It's like, what was it? Probably about 4 years ago when they had the George, no, it wasn't George Floyd, it was,
Ferguson.
yeah, Ferguson, Michael Brown. You had, in St. Louis, the rich area, a couple of lawyers living in a multi-level home. So you're talking about gated community, multi-millionaires probably. Group of people come in protesting. Really what it is they're tearing up the stuff while they're doing it. Maybe they are protesting. You might just have a few people are looking to tear things up, but anyhow, private property, their private property. You know, gated community is entirely their private property. Their home, their yard is their private property. They're in their yard with a rifle and a pistol while people are walking by shouting threats at them. They're just standing. And whenever threats are levied, it's like, okay, are you doing something? Right? So I've got this gun. It's waving around. Lady's got a gun that doesn't even work, a little pistol. She's pointing at people. And what happens to them? Yeah, well, and it's not just the fact that yes, you're facing a very real danger. Yes, they are very much levying death threats at you. We're gonna burn your house down with you in it, right? We're gonna kill your dog, whatever. It's like you got that stuff going on and they're well within defined statutes. So defined statutes there directly say it's a essentially a stand your ground castle doctrine type of situation. You're in your goddamn yard, right? They're threatening you. They're the ones who got arrested. They're the ones who got raided. They're the ones who went to jail for a little bit of time. They're the ones who pled guilty. Right? Could they have bought that? Yes. How much money are they going to lose? More than it was worth to them, apparently, even though they're wildly rich, probably, I would gather. But yeah,
ignorance is a plague and it spreads like one.
yeah. And so fear is one of those things that's, you know, what it does to people is more than what you think. So there's the emotional, there's the part that's in your head where you're concerned about what's, you know, where the danger's at. And then there's everything you do as a result, right? And so basically we start talking about is, in terms of research, they'll give you the cognitive side. That's the, how much danger is there if you go to your park, if you're having to walk through the parking lot, you're on campus on a Friday night at 11 p.m. midnight, 1 AM, whatever. Yeah, there can be a little bit, but not much. Right? That's cognitive. You have the emotional where it's like, okay? You're walking to your car. As you're walking through your car, to your car on this dark night in the middle of this scary campus, it's like, what are you feeling? Usually feeling okay, right?
Tired.
Yeah,
because-
it's like, I'm worn out, it's been a long day, party was really fun though. Like, yeah, okay, so not here. Some places, like my last year was inner city, when you're walking to your car, you're walking a quarter mile, it's dark. And there was a shooting just right over there last week, right across the street. Different thing going on here, right? And then you have.
Wait, inner city university?
Yeah, my last university was in Little Rock.
Wait, last city university you worked at?
Yeah, the last one I worked at was.
How are you alive?
I know how to shoot, no, I'm just, I am a marksman. There were a couple times where I did have a bullet, you know, it's like that kind of thing, it's like, that's not fucking cool. But I can tell you about that some other time. So this will eventually lead to some type of behavioral thing. So what type of behaviors are we talking about? Typically, what they'll talk about is are defensive and constrained. Right? Defensive. I'm carrying a weapon now, right? It's like, yeah, whenever I lived close to the university and the area is kind of rough, it's like, had a weapon. When I first moved here, I didn't know that. The only weapon I had was a hammer. You can scare some people off with it, but if you're gonna engage with the group, you don't want to do that, right? You want something you trust something fast. Defensive behaviors, carrying a weapon, that kind of stuff. Constrained behaviors. What do you avoid? Right?
Situations.
Yeah. Well, hell, I know if I go over to this 7-Eleven at this point in time, there's probably gonna be some, rough people over there.
Crackheads.
Yeah, it's like, these people, they're needing a fix and they're looking to rob somebody, right? It's like, if I go over there, I'm gonna see at least a couple people like that, or at least a couple people out there spanging. You ever heard that term, spare? Change?
It's like when you're, oh,
Yeah, spanging.
oh, yeah.
And so it's like, okay, maybe that's what that is. Maybe it's a ruse just to get you at ease and they're gonna have two friends come up out of the alley, right? It's like, if you've seen that happen, you're avoiding that area from now on. How many nights a week do you not go out because you're afraid of victimization? That's that, right? And so if you start thinking about those things and how crime can affect people in all of those different ways, you end up with something that'll look like about what they've got here. Where if I say share screen, you'll see, boom. Okay, here's what they're worried about. Who fears crime, that kind of stuff, right? How many are worried about actually getting murdered or sexually assaulted or burglarized or loss of identity and that kind of thing. General trend here is what we're talking about is the level of fear versus the commonality of crime. Identity theft, very common. There's gonna be some level of fear of it because it sucks. It's not gonna be the same thing as that situation I just outlined, where it's like you're actively in, right? And that's why the numbers get smaller as you get more serious. Because people who have those experiences are gonna be fewer, still a sizable amount, there's still a large number of them, but smaller. And so that's why it drops down as 22% worried about being attacked while driving their car, okay? Go to South America. What's their level gonna be? A lot higher, why? Because they have that stuff happen all the time. Hell, they've had designs for booby traps that shoot flames out underneath the driver's side door or shit like that, because they have such a problem with it.
You go to Eastern Africa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sudan, getting a light pickup,
Mm-hmm.
driving down the road, you're gonna get shot at.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like how safe we have it here and how fearful people are. It's crazy because there's that inverse. It's like what 96% of Americans are worried about crime and violence. Why? It's the safest country that there is. You move, and if you pull out the statistics, literally, if you cut out the top, we'll say 5, 10, or if you did 20, it'd be even better. Most populous cities, guess what? We go from being really low on safety across countries in the entire world to we're like number 3. Right? It's all a big city problem. It's just everyone pays for it. Right?
Yeah.
And that's what's going on there.
But the type of violence is different too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
People setting bombs on the side of the road, either.
Yeah.
People blowing themselves up to kill hundreds of people.
And the severity of that risk, right? And so you end up with wildly different, like in that, you'd start dealing with the military population. You'll find that they're starkly different than the regular average citizen, right?
So wait, are those numbers higher or lower?
It depends. So you have a little bit of active stress, like military on military duty. Yeah, I don't,
Yeah.
I'd say anxiety probably more than fear. Because,
Trauma.
yeah, and trauma is associated with what PTSD is so common. It's like, you have to deal with that for any period of time.
Yeah.
It's a extended period of time. It's like, that shit's gonna carry the burden.
It's kind of common.
I mean,
Oh,
people
yeah.
in my life, but that's,
Oh, yeah, well, it's probably, that's 13% probably that are diagnosed, right?
Yeah,
And it's like, I've got three family members who are military just within my generation, right? Every one of them has some degree of it. Like if particularly ones that went to any type of active area, let's say we're having a birthday party. This actually happened once, having a birthday party and they're blowing up balloons and I accidentally popped one. Who's gonna jump? It's like the guy who's in the military just got back like 6 months ago. He's gonna be, okay, is it go time? My heart rate's just jumped up about 300%.
yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's like that shit happens, right? All of that's gonna be related to all of this process. Who was it? I remember listening to somebody who was talking a little bit about naivety. And it's like the inverse of naivety. So naivety is where you don't understand something, you're not ready for it. A lot of people go into the military naive, like you're gonna have to shoot and kill somebody. Here's what that looks like. And they've had no experiences with that. You walk in there and you have to do that. Guess what? That PTSD, the likelihood of that skyrockets. You go in there, you've been experienced with some type of trauma, that kind of stuff before. It's like, if you've worked through it, if you prepared yourself enough, PTSD will go down.
You can't
Really?
prepare yourself for it.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things that firsthand experience is gonna be something that only those who have it, right? And so that's gonna be one thing, but I guess that kind of does kind of take into this next section, when we start talking about who fears crime. And what you'll see is they'll break it down by demographics. But what you'll see here is really what you're talking about is different populations. And what generates fear, what types of things that they're having to deal with that generate fear. Like military populations, active
Yeah.
duty, right?
yeah.
Gender, it's gonna be a lot of the sex-based crimes. If you look at race, you're gonna be talking about economics and drugs. You talk about what would be another example? Age becomes violent crime. Why is it violent crime? Violent crime is pretty rare. Then how many people are old that are looking to go get in fights? Not very many. Go ahead, Rich. Tell me what you're gonna say.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, right after I got out of, the prison, upstairs was called the Trism, because it's pretty much minimum security prison. And
Mhm.
eventually, because they said it was unsafe for me to go upstairs, they moved me downstairs to a place called Auschwitz. That's where I was
Yeah.
almost murdered 2 dozen times, and I know about 10 people, and that's just the ones I know about, who were murdered over more or less just paperwork, but that's another story.
Yeah.
How this is relevant is that, when I got home, I found out that my mom had turned my room into a storage closet. So after cleaning that up and finally being able to rest, I heard her coming in. I was like, oh no, oh no, it's one of those people who
Yeah.
can have shanks, but don't get punished for it, because that would result in the people in charge having to do paperwork. So I was up and at attention is like,
Yeah.
geez, boy.
Yeah. Every
I
time
think
someone comes in,
I
you
did-
jump. That kind of thing.
So like she didn't understand it, and well, she's not exactly the most sane person, so I didn't really take the time to explain it to her.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Pain.
I just gonna think, so yeah, I didn't make her brown, wasn't her fault,
Mhm.
so
Yeah,
My
and
dad's a combat veteran too, so when I got back,
Mhm.
it was really bad. This is two combat veterans with two different, so he was in Iraq, I was in Afghanistan.
Mhm.
So like completely different experiences, but like kind of the same reactions. to
Yeah,
things. It
it's
got-
crazy.
So I
Yeah.
moved out pretty quick.
Yeah, I can imagine, because it is something that'll feed off of each other. Like if you react to a certain way,
Yeah.
they're gonna react to the fact that you're reacting,
Mhm,
because they're used to working in a small group where your lives are dependent on each other.
mhm.
And it's like, that's a hell of a thing, right? How people respond and who should fear crime, right? Fear has consequences, yes. Vulnerable, isolation, quality of life, neighborhood decline. This kind of stuff, neighborhood decline and the increase in the problem itself. There have been a few times where I've taken issues and I kind of showed it's like, okay, here's the underlying questions, kind of more philosophical. It's kind of the same thing here. When you start seeing neighborhood degradation, crime actually increasing or decreasing, what it is those are more of a
symptom rather.
Yes, you could say a symptom, you could say an abstraction, it's like, if we left this crime problem unaddressed, you know, what's gonna happen? You know, it's going to decline, as people are more afraid, more people are staying inside, right? More people won't go out. The less you communicate with your neighbors, guess what? Your neighborhood starts declining, because you don't have those social networks to keep things up. Within not even a generation, within a matter of years, if you got an area that's starting to decline, okay, maybe a house will go for sale. Okay, what happens next? Turns into a rent house. Next thing comes in, you get somebody, first renters are okay. Second renters, yeah, question. Third renters, house is getting round down. It's now going for $200 cheaper than what it was. And now this person's got a drug problem. That's right next door. Right? Another house does the same thing. Guess what? Now you got open drug transactions in the street. Guess what? Anyone who can move is gone. Right? That's neighborhood decline. So like I said, it's one of those things, it's like a degree removed. And it's the same thing with the crime problem. It's like they're all going to be associated with all of these things. All of them are connected, and you change, it's sort of like a spider web. You start pulling on one of the threads, the whole thing's going to move to a certain degree. It's just what things are closer together, right? And so you end up with this kind of stuff. Here's what they do. Avoiding places, dogs, alarms, weapons. Yes.
It says that a percentage of people did that, but does it specify what percentages and
Oh,
where
I'm
they're
sure it
getting their
does.
numbers?
So this would have been a study in 2007. So that would probably be an NCVS that came out around that time where they're asking about weapons use.
Oh, okay.
So what'll happen is they're, with the way that they conduct the study, they're trying to get to where it's representative of every area they're hitting. So they're trying to get the entire country. And so they're trying to capture, you know, rural counties here, urban city here, and all that kind of stuff. So it's really weird how they kind of select things until you know what the process is. But ideally what it is they'll get a percentage that will apply to this study, but it'll also apply more generally to the country. So it's kind of an estimate at the same time. So if they say, you know, this one was, you know, 27% and this one's 5%, it's like across the board, that kind of thing. All right, victimization trends, what do I need to tell you about that? 2017, it says going estimated 19 million crimes, 12 or older, down from 21 from the years before. So basically what you need to know about those crime trends. I don't think I talked about that. Then we'll kind of, because this is about done. And so we'll pick up 3 next time. The victimization trends, who they are. Yeah. Victimization trends. Basically what you need to know is the general trend for crime has been something that has done this. Since about the 90s, it's been going down. And then since about COVID, it started going up again. Where it's at now, I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to look, and some of those numbers are still coming out. And so like the 90s, it was going down. Before that, it was slowly increasing from like the, you know, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And then 2000s, it was down. And then COVID started bringing it back up.
So like they were saying that 90% of the population was committing crimes?
No. Where are you pulling 90% from? No. These are the years, 1990.
Oh, sorry. I thought that was like, I know that times are tough, but even the children,
Yeah, so I like that. Yeah, so basically what happened
I
was
mean, that does happen,
Yeah.
but you know.
crime was getting worse. If you've ever heard the word, it was politically charged, super predators. That's this era. You hear the 1994 Safe Street Gun Control Act, right? The 94 Gun Control Act, there was a Safe Streets Act. I think those were separate. They might have been built together. I don't remember. It was like, that stuff happened here, right? When crime was at its height. Now, the effects that those things had were absolutely zero, and probably many things were detrimental there. That's a different conversation. But crime in general across all types was going down until society started doing what it did in 2020 and breaking down. So that's it for today. We'll pick up, we're going to talk a little bit about this. Basically, what you start dealing with is who's more likely to be victims, money, and then everything that intersects with it. Right, and so we'll pick up with theory on Tuesday or Wednesday. I said Tuesday. And so with that, I will see you all Tuesday, and if you have any questions, y'all need anything like, or Wednesday, not Tuesday.
I like
did
you,
that.
but not that
Yeah.
much.
I'm here tomorrow, but I won't be
Oh,
teaching
no,
this
I'm so
class.
sorry.
Yeah, if you need me, I won't be in office right after class, because I have to go home and find my keys. And that's a different story for a different day, so. If you need me, send me an email. I will be back for my office hours after, what is it, like 12 to 1 today? And then if you need me other than that, send me an email. We can get something scheduled. If you need to meet with me, we'll just talk by email. That I will see you on Wednesday. Have fun. Take care. Don't cause too much.
That quiz. tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, just take time. And you know, if there's some reason you can't go, don't worry about it. It'll today. Yeah, 3 times on all quizzes in here. The only thing that'll be different will be the midterm and the final will be 1 attempt, but you'll have more time and you've done the quizzes. Kind of keep your eyes on the quizzes because they both in the same points.
Are those gonna be done in here or?
No, we'll do those online because we won't have time to get through everything. We're already running. I'll start moving a little bit faster, but we're running behind on schedules. I wouldn't expect that. Unless y'all stop talking and I start moving real fast and they might come back.
Yeah.
So as long as you guys are talking, it's good.
How you doing?
All right, and I will see you later. You stay out of trouble, especially if you're a vengeful Johnny Depp. See you
Listen,
later.
I can't promise. Peace.
See you later. Bye.